Hello guys, I'm Craig McLean. Welcome to episode 3 of the mini twin cam 16 valve improvements. In this episode we're going to concentrate on the last couple of things that we really need to do before the engine can go back in. They include the bracketry that holds the turbo actuator, because the previous bracketry was just not man enough. A good clean down of both the engine and the engine bay, because both of them have got dirty over the years, and while it's out I may as well give it a real good clean. Changing the cam belt, because the cam belt's been on 7 years and it just makes sense to do it while it's out. And setting the timing. We'll go through setting the timing up correctly as I should have done 7 years ago. Let's get on with some of them jobs now. So this is the other issue I've had. So as you can see, the compressor housing, which is that part there, needed spun round so that the outlet pipe came out here, because obviously on a Saab it's configured very different, so I had to spin that round so that it came out in a usable position. The problem is that's the bracket round there with the 2 holes in, that holds the actuator. So that means that the bracket is now in the wrong place to hold the actuator. The actuator needs to be around about where I'm holding it here, and obviously at the minute it isn't. So at the time I decided, well, the turbo is brand new, it's Garrett, it's just out of the box. If I go and start welding brackets onto it, you can say bye-bye to that warranty, because it's out the window. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to make something else work. So I'll just rig it up now and I'll show you how I've had it configured, and I'll explain the issues that I've got with that configuration. So I've quickly rigged it up to show how I had done it. So there, as you can see, I've made an aluminium bracket that comes off the original bracket, rolls round, follows on, and is capable of bolting the actuator into its new position. But the problem with it is that bracket, due to the length of it, it's just not manly enough to hold the necessary pressure onto the actuator arm, because that's got to hold that actuator flap shut, solid shut. And there's just too much give in that bracket. Hence the reason why now I'm going to make a bracket that we can actually weld onto the housing, because the warranty has long since gone. We can forget about warranties now. So I can now do it the way I would have liked to have done it to start with. So I'll get on, I'll make a bracket. I'm going to Exhaust Craft in the morning to get that bracket welded on. I'll let you see all that progress as it goes. Right, quite a few hours later, quite a bit of cardboard aided design, and now transferred out of aluminium, we have this. So if I can do it with one hand, let me show you just how this goes. So put that on there, slides on the shaft as normal, and that sits just like that. So now that will be welded. As you can see, it follows all the housing nicely. That will be aluminium welded onto the housing of the turbo tomorrow, and then I can set the pressure up on the actuator. And I've actually got the actuator closer into the turbo and slightly higher up to give us a bit more clearance on the turbo bulkhead box. So all I've got to do now is get this turbo unbolted and obviously ready for Dave tomorrow to weld on for me. And I've got a bit of a mess to tidy up, because I am a very messy worker when it comes to doing fabrication work. I've got bloody drilling shavings everywhere and all sorts. So yeah, a bit of tidying up to do as well. But I'm pleased with that. I think that's going to be a major improvement on what we've already got. Right, there's our newly fabricated bracket, all welded on really nicely. And massive thanks to Dave Howard at Exhaust Craft. Dave did some work on the exhaust on the Escort. He absolutely loves welding. I've took this round to him, and he wouldn't even take anything for doing it. He says no. He says I really enjoyed doing it. He says it's a joy to work with when you're working with good materials, because he actually said the casting on the turbo was really good quality. It made it really nice to weld. So yeah, huge thanks to Dave. again. So he's done a lovely job of that. I can now get the actuator bolted on, and it'll be a far more substantial than it ever was. Right, that's us back together, and that is one hell of a difference. We're now actually applying pressure on this rod, on that arm, rather than having a lot of play in the bracket. The bracket is absolutely solid. It's really substantial, and I'm much happier with that now. That's that sorted. Next, we'll be moving on to probably cam belt, a good clean up, and timing. Right, now that I've got the fan off for cleaning and various bits removed, such as the bottom engine mount, I'll be able to give you a closer look at how it works from the drive end. So this is the Specialist Components conversion plate. This bolts on to the end of the head. So that's a part that they've made to make this conversion work. As you can see, we've got vernier timing gears to get our timing absolutely perfect, even though I didn't manage to do it first time. And you can also see the route that the cam belt takes. So around the top two pulleys, comes down, round, this is a forward tensioner, it goes through, round the bottom, there's a, as you can see there, there's a tooth gear being machined by Specialist Components for the bottom crank pulley, or behind the bottom crank pulley rather. It then comes up. Now this here, this obviously on a standard A series, this is what would have drove your cam. So you'd had, you know, your cam, that is actually the original cam. There would have been a chain, a gear, a big gear here, smaller gear on your crank, and a chain between the two. That would have been encased in a compartment full of oil to drive your cam from your crank. Now, obviously, the cam still needs to remain in place, because at the other end of the cam, at the far end of the engine, from where we're situated, is the oil pump. And anyone who knows the Minis will know that the cam drives the oil pump. So this cam that's in it here is actually, it's not actually a cam, it's just a shaft. It's a rounded off shaft that runs all the way through. It's probably just been an old cam that they've just machined the lobes off, to be honest. And that drives the oil pump at the far end. So when it comes to timing it up, you don't have to worry about what position that's in. It's simply a drive. Obviously, the positions between your crank and your inlet and exhaust cam are what matters. Yeah, so that gives you a bit of a better idea how it works from this end. And then we've got the Specialist Components trigger wheel kit. This is, again, this just bolts into the centre of the original pulley. And then another beautiful CNC machine bracket that comes off for your sensor. So there you can see how the sensor works. And there, as it happens, the position sensor is actually pointing at the missing tooth. There's actually a missing tooth there, as you can see. If you go all the way around, there's teeth all the way around, and at that point there, there's a missing tooth, and that's to tell it exactly when it's at. I think it's at top dead when it hits that point. It's so that the sensor knows what position the engine is in. So yeah, I am going to be replacing this belt for a new one while it's off. As I mentioned, I'll put a new Gates belt on. But yeah, that just gives you a better idea how it looks from this end. Again, as I've said many times before, beautiful kit, some beautifully machined CNC made parts for this kit. I've always been a big fan of what the parts that Specialist Components produce. They're just absolutely outstanding. Right, well, the next job should really be changing the cam belt, which I've now got a new Gates cam belt, but I haven't got the DTI at the minute, and I'm also going to be borrowing some bits that a friend of mine made who built one of these, which is basically a plunger that screws into one of your spark plug holes, either on number 1 and 4, that you can then rest the DTI on the top. He made this lovely bit of kit for setting top dead, and I'm going to borrow that off him and get the DTI, and then we can get top dead set, and then we can finally set the lift on the inlet and the exhaust cam. So I haven't got that yet, so I'm going to now switch my attention to cleaning under the bonnet, ready for the engine going back in. Needs a real good clean under there while the engine's out. You've seen us doing the engine. The engine's now absolutely beautiful. It's gleaming. We need to get the engine bay up to the same standard, which is what I'm going to get on with today. So hopefully it'll show up on camera, the difference. I don't know how well it'll show up, how dirty it is, but I'll get on with cleaning that today, leaving the final job being the cam timing and the cam belt replacement. Right, I'm going to be honest, I've had a very, very, very proud moment today, because this car was built in 2008. That's 15 years ago. And I'm going over it, cleaning it, thinking, I cannot believe the condition that this car is still in for 15 years. Now I know I've looked after it well. I've took it out in the rain minimally, very minimally. If I got up to go to a show and it was raining, I generally went back to bed, because it was just too much to keep clean, too much cleaning afterwards. But I'm so blown away by just how well it still is after all them years. So I'm going to show you some close-ups, but before I do, remember, it was built 15 years ago. It was the first car I ever built, and it was done with the absolute most basic of tools, in definitely not the best facilities. And you know, the shell itself was built in a cold damp barn. The car was built in a garage similar to this, but it was reassembled in a garage similar to this. But yeah, I'll show you some close-ups, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted just how well this still looks. I remember spending a lot of time P-clipping them brake lines in, following the contour of the subframe. Don't mind the scratches there, that's where the engine mounts sit. There's absolutely no point retouching them up. Everything is just still so very, very nice for 15 years ago. And it was put together. I'm chuffed to bits with that, I really am. It's made my day, just how well that's come up. This just leads me on to a battle I've been having with myself for a long time now. Every Monday night after work, I call it YouTube night, I watch all the people that I subscribe to. I watch some fantastic people, but the one group of people that I watch in absolute sheer envy is Retro Power. And I'll explain why. The absolute sheer quality of what they build, everything's done right. They've got fantastic facilities and tools now. They've got great guys working for them. I just watch it in sheer awe, I really do. Because although I have a great job where I am, I can't complain about my job. It's most certainly not where I see myself in 10, 15 years time. And I watch their videos and think, that's exactly where I would love to be. If I could be somewhere similar to that, building cars to the quality of this and the Escort you have all seen, for people, you know, in nice facilities, in nice big facilities that I'd have to build up over time, with good tools that I would have to acquire over time. That would just be a dream for me, it really would. The problem is, there just isn't the customer base around here to support it, because to build a car to these two specifications, to the quality that you see here, would mean I would have to charge a customer for the Escort certainly way over 100 grand, and for the Mini probably up towards there. And although the likes of Retro Power managed to find these customers, I just can't see it happening around here. I really can't. And the problem around here as well is there's some fantastically talented people around here that I would employ in a heartbeat. But the problem is we've got a local nuclear site which pays fantastic wages And that's what people want. People obviously want, they go to work for a wage, they go to work for money. They don't go to work to, for anything else. They go to work for money. So getting people to work for you and being able to pay them an amount of money that would be acceptable to them is really difficult as well. So yeah, it'll probably always remain a pipe dream for me to be able to do this, to be able to build cars to this quality, these two cars' quality. I mean, the Mini here isn't built to the quality of the Escort. That was the very first car I ever built. I certainly didn't have the skills I've got now. I didn't have the tools I've got now. But I still think it's turned out. And even today, I still think it looks $1 million. I really do. And to think that what I could do with the right facilities and better tools and some really good guys working for us. Or imagine, what I could be producing. This is what I keep thinking to myself, what I could be producing in a facility where I had good guys and good tooling. And I just think I really do think I could do it, but for the reasons I've just explained, it'll never happen. And it's a real shame, because that's exactly where I would love to be. I really would. Anyways, I'll stop rambling on. It's just something I think about a lot every Monday night as I'm watching Retro Power in sheer envy. That's where I would certainly love to be, but maybe in another life there. Right, so this is the correct belt for this setup. Obviously, there isn't a specific belt for this setup. When Specialist Components obviously put the kit together, they've just found a belt that was the correct length. So this is a Gates 5371XS, and there's a list of the vehicles that it fits. So yeah, we can get on now and get that swapped over before we head on into some timing. So this is us setting top dead center. Me and Anthony have been trying to get actual top dead center by using the DTI and a timing disc, and we found that it rocks between 173 and 175, so we've set it at 174 right in the middle. So that should be actual top dead. Now we can move on to setting the lift on the inlet and the exhaust cams. Do you like our way of holding the DTI down? Sometimes you just got to improvise. Right, it's quite tricky to do. In fact, it's very bloody tricky to do, because there isn't much surface area on top of the cam followers for you to aim your DTI onto, but we managed to do it with actually an Allen key, which has the bent end that goes round underneath and sits flat on the cam lobe but doesn't touch the cam, because you can't have the DTI rubbing on the cam or you get an imperfect reading, as most people will know already. So that is 0.8 on the inlet and 0.8 on the exhaust, with actual top dead set at the same time, and we've nipped them up. So we're really hoping that makes all the difference. So if I show you the gauge there, we started off at 0, which is just up here, and then a full revolution would be 1 mil. So we've went to 20, which is 0.8, and we've done that on both inlet and exhaust. But speaking to Specialist Components just today, it turns out that they do a reground set of turbo cams, which has really got me thinking now, because they would obviously certainly increase the power and enable me to run even less boost. So I think what we'll do is we'll probably run it as it is, and then if we're unhappy with the power figures, or we're unhappy with the amount of boost we're having to run for the power figures, it's something to think about in future. I didn't actually know they did them, so that's quite interesting. But anyways, let's get the cam cover back on, get it all back together, and to be honest, there isn't much more to do, and the engine can go back in the car. And just a bit of a close-up, looking down on the exhaust and inlet cams with the cam cover off. Plug leads all fitted back on. We've applied some sealant, just need to get the cam cover put back on, tightened up, and we're almost there. Right, that's us done. Other than replacing the hoses on the back of the head down to the collector, that's the engine ready to go back in. I'm also going to do a full nut and bolt check. I'm going to go all over it and make sure absolutely everything's tight. You can't be too careful. So yeah, I'm chuffed with that. I'm just hoping it makes all the difference. 2 mil of lift down to 0.8 mil of lift, because apparently speaking to John Kimmins at Specialist Components, who's very knowledgeable, he was saying that turbos don't like cam overlap. So basically 2 mil of overlap is quite a lot. So now we've only got 0.8, which is apparently where it needs to be. So I'm hoping this is worthwhile doing and we get the power figures that it should have got 7 years ago. So I'm just going to explain a little bit more about what we've just done for people who might not have fully followed it. So the first thing we did is we got the engine at top dead centre, and what that means is piston number 1, which is this side, and number 4 at the far side, are at their absolute top point. They're as far high as they're going to get before they start going back down again. Now there is an amount of rock where the gauge kind of flicks between, it kind of flicks, and you need to find the centre point to get actual top dead. So that's what we've done. We've made every attempt to try and get exact top dead or actual top dead. And then what you do to dial in the amount of lift is the silver section here on these vernier pulleys actually slip inside the black section. So basically what that means is when you've got it at top dead centre, the belt will hold the black section perfectly still, and if you loosen off these 4 nuts, you can then turn the cams. There's like a hexagonal section on the cams. You can turn the cams, which move the inner part, what the nuts are attached to, and basically you can move this full silver section inside the black outer section, so they stay still, the belt stays still, but you move the centre section so the cams are at the exact right amount of timing, and then once you get the timing exactly right with your DTI, in this case 0.8 mil for both, you can then lock off these nuts with the engine still at top dead, and that should be it. And last time I did it to 2 mil as per the manual. So yeah, that should hopefully make a massive difference. I hope that all makes sense to people who've never done it before. Obviously some of you I'll be teaching, you know, how to suck eggs almost. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Just one more thing I probably should have mentioned for those not in the know-how, to try and make it a bit easier. Cam lift is basically how much the valve opens. So when the engine's at top dead centre, we turn the cams so that the cam follower, which is situated just under the cams, we turn the cams until them cam followers come up to their maximum rise. You know, they come up to the highest point, and then basically we situate the DTI gauge on top of one of them cam followers, so it's really difficult to get at, but you can get the little pin on the edge, and then basically you zero your gauge so it's in the 0 position, and then you turn your cam to open the valve, and we want to open it, in this case 0.8 mil. So basically you're watching your gauge go all the way around, and when you get to 0.8 mil you stop and you lock the nuts off. That's what valve lift is. It's the measurement that the valve opens when you're at top dead centre. I would just like to point out as well that I'm not an engine builder by any stretch of the imagination. I've learned what I've learned off the years with working with people like my best mate Anthony, who was here today. He was a mechanic for many years and has done loads and loads of cam belts down the years, and his dad. I'm more suited to bodywork. I prefer metalwork, fabrication, welding, stuff like that. So if there's people watching, like engine builders watching, thinking, yeah, everything I've done isn't technically perfectly correct, then just bear that in mind as you're watching the videos, that I'm home taught, basically. I've picked up what I've picked up down the years. I try my best, and things generally do turn out pretty well. So the way I look at it is, I can't be doing it too much wrong for the way things turn out. Well guys, that's pretty much the engine ready to go back in. I'm pleased with how everything went. The cam timing would have been a lot easier if I'd managed to get the bits I mentioned earlier on in the video from a friend, Tim Styles, if you're watching. Tim made some fantastic parts to make setting the cam timing a lot easier, and when I rang Tim, he was in Lanzarote alright for summer, so I couldn't quite get the parts off Tim when I needed them. So we battled through, we got through it, and hopefully we've managed to get it right and do the engine some justice. So yeah, I'm chuffed with how it went. It's come up gleaming, the engine bay's come up gleaming, everything's went as well as could be expected. All I've really got left to do now is fit them hoses, the new hoses on, from the back of the head down to the collector, and a good nut and bolt check. I want to go over everything, making sure every nut and bolt is tight and it's ready to go back in. So in the next episode, you'll be seeing the engine going back in, it all getting buttoned back up, and a couple of under the engine bay mods I want to do to, in particular, the boost hose. So yeah, we're definitely getting there now. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll be back very shortly with some further content where we'll get, like I say, we'll get the engine back in and hopefully get it fired up and iron out any issues. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.